is it necessary to avoid it? Like, does somebody need to avoid the AI space? So with this overweighting in this one space, does it cause any problems for investors? Like, what are the bad things that happen when they overreact and they succumb to FOMO, and how can they prevent that? You guys ready for another one?
Sure. Shoot.
This one's fun. At least I think it's fun. The next one is all about the AI space, the AI stocks. So again, maybe we could put this article up through the magic of technology. All right, so this article is titled, AI is so big, it's now impossible for investors to avoid. And so the premise of this article goes into talking about how the S&P 500, how the top 10 stocks of the S&P 500 make up 40% of the value of the index. Not only that, but 9 of those 10 stocks are in the AI space. They have a business that is tied to AI. All right, so with that being said, I'm actually, my first question is for you, Steve. I know you just got done talking, but we're going to go back over to you. Because I hear you guys, so AI is big in swing trading group. It's been also in the successful investing portfolio. But we've seen the AI space get hit recently like 30 some odd percent. The premise of this article is it's now impossible for investors to avoid. So my question for you, Steve, is it necessary to avoid it? Like, does somebody need to avoid the AI space?
That's a loaded question. So I would answer this maybe in a couple of different ways, but we'll start with one particular way. I would say this: there are stocks in the AI space that are worth something. There are stocks in the AI space that are trading below what VectorVest says they're actually worth. And the interesting thing is those stocks are the ones that Wall Street rather is kind of telling folks to shy away from. One would be NVIDIA. I haven't looked at the actual numbers in a while, but I know NVIDIA is trading well below its current value in VectorVest. And boy, it's been quite a fun ride already. If you hadn't been a part of that, I wish you would have. We've been talking about NVIDIA at VectorVest since 2016. Really got super serious about talking heavily about it in 2018, and it's been just a tremendous run, and it's not done, AI is definitely a big part of the future. I don't think anybody can deny that. The question becomes, when do all the other players, and there are some, Micron is another big player who's trading actually well below its value after this recent pullback. And here again, Wall Street is telling folks, hey, be careful of these memory stock runs because they're 4x, 6x, 12x over the last couple of years. When in reality, that's the kind of money they're making, and continue to make and continue to have that same kind of potential in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these stocks double or triple from here in a relatively, short time frame, that being maybe a few years. And so that's all very real. But at VectorVest, we believe in market direction, and we believe in only buying shares of stocks of companies who are making money. So there's a lot of AI stocks still to avoid, and there are some, and many of them happen to be the ones that are now preponderant dominance of the indices. They've earned the right to do that to some respect, to have that kind of impact because they are making that kind of money. I would be more fearful of the ones who aren't. And I would be even more fearful of when's the right time to start buying them. And I think right now is the time to be patient and wait for, we know that when in VectorVest the buy to sell ratio gets below 0.2, that's when you want to unleash the beast. That's when you want to buy anything you can get your hands on at the best prices possible. And so here's one thing that I've learned over my 25 years, and I think it's probably just a stock market universal truth, and that is markets reward patience. They they really destroy the impatient. And so patience is key.
Should have used that in our swing trading group this morning. Marcus, reward patience. So I would say that you shouldn't avoid any industry or sector. So the question was, should you avoid AI stocks? I think, like Steve was saying, if the numbers line up, if the company is undervalued, if RV is strong, if RS is strong, if the trend is up, I like to look at moving averages. So no matter what sector, no matter what industry group, if the numbers all are favorable, and again, I like to look at the 20 and the 50-day moving averages. If the hype is supposedly over, if prices are above these moving averages, you got a pretty good shot of making some money on some of these trades, whether they're in the AI industry or petroleum or mining. I'm just going to go back to what the VectorVest indicators say. Do your individual stock analysis, look at moving averages, look at certain technical indicators like Steve and I do, and everything's lining up, then it's going to line up for a high probability trade regardless of what industry it's in. So I would say never avoid an industry. If everything is in place, you got a pretty good shot at a good trade.
Yeah, you got a good disclaimer there. We just recently updated our AI watch list. I forgot how many are in there. It's like 150 companies are in there now. But like any industry, there's a bunch of crap in the industry. Can we say that?
I think you can.
We can say that? There's a bunch of crap in there that just have AI in the ticker symbol or AI in the company name, and people are thinking they could jump on board. And I'm glad you guys touched on what people should look at. Even in our watch list, it's going to be sorted by the top value, safety, and timing stocks at the top. So don't just jump into the AI space because it's got AI in the name or the ticker symbol. There's good and there's bad.
There's a lot of .coms that had the same issue, right? Everybody started buying the stocks because they had .com. They worked .com into the name, and that was a disaster. So you want to avoid that.
Well, Todd,
Brian.
I'm going to ask you more a question on diversification.
Okay.
All right, so this article talked about AI is carrying so much weight. So some invest in indexes a lot. They're like, oh, I'm invested in the S&P. I'm diversified. I got an index fund, and they think I'm diversified. So with this overweighting in this one space, does it cause any problems for investors who think, oh, I'm diversified, but are they or are they not? Is it okay? Is it not okay?
Well, here's the tell. What'd your portfolio do since May? Right? So when oil prices started climbing because of the Middle East conflict, the inflation overtook interest rates. So now you have a negative real return. All of a sudden, the discount on the valuation into the future collapses, and so does the price. Right? So everybody goes running for the exits and tries to go into safety. That dynamic, right, has you more focused in this space when the top, what'd you say, the top nine stocks?
9 of the top 10.
9 of the top 10 have most of the value in the S&P. Yeah, you're exposed, right? So if you suffered pullback, you were probably overexposed to the AI space, even though, right, it broadened enough that we're looking at, air conditioning companies, and we're looking at power generation, and right. So there are a lot of related trades, but all based on that same thesis. When we get into mature markets that become more and more narrowly focused, right? The ideal situation would be a broadening economy where multiple sectors are rising, where there's a lot of opportunity because the economy is growing broadly. There are a lot of opportunities to diversify, and as we get into the later stages and we focus on fewer and fewer sectors or narratives, that becomes more difficult, and the risk of overexposure becomes more exaggerated. So ultimately, it goes back to that process. Okay, how am I protecting the backside of this trade? How am I getting out? Am I going to hedge it? Am I going to close out the trade? Or do I want to take some profits now? Right. So there are a lot of strategies we can use to mitigate some of that risk, But the idea is you need to mitigate some of that risk.
I'm going to ask you guys a question. Follow up
6.
on that. It's 21, but sorry, you got it wrong. Steve had the over, so he got it right. It might cause a fight. We don't always agree, folks. Even among these guys. I know they look like they agree all the time, but I'm going to ask a question that we talked about months ago. I'm going to revisit. Where I believe Steve and Todd, you guys had a disagreement. And because we teach in our successful investing course, diversification. You know, step in a couple stocks at a time, 1 or 2 stocks per industry. And I think if I remember correctly, Steve, you're like, ride the hot hand. Like, it's okay to be, if this stock is it bad? This stock is overweight. Is there really a reason to downsize it? If it's the hot hand, maybe I misunderstood, and you can clarify for everybody. It kind of goes back to the original question, which is, if that's the hot hand, is it okay to be overweight in that sector while it's hot, if they know when to underweight? Or should they just never get into that situation and just always be equally diversified across industries? So I don't know if that was a representation of what you said months ago, but if not, let us know. If so, defend your position. So I'll give Todd this one.
All right, so I think that revitalizes my memory a little bit. Now, the question, I think that, well, the way I would address this now would be hopefully clear. I do think that you should ride the hot hands, but that doesn't mean that it comes without being diversified. And so, for example, I think it's okay to own several stocks within a particular industry or sector. I also think that at times, owning an entire basket of those stocks can outperform. So it really comes down to what you're trying to accomplish, what your objective is. If your objective is to make as much money as quickly as you can, then I have much less to do with diversification than if my objective is to more methodically grow my portfolio over time. At that point, I think diversification is helpful because it mitigates drawdowns. The other thing it does is it mitigates returns. So, you know, being diversified, we often think of from a safety perspective, but what a lot of people never tell you is that it can be a detriment in terms of your overall return. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I don't see us divergent at all, actually.
Okay.
I'm surprised that you saw that as different, because that's ultimately my approach here is it's trade-offs. This is yin-yang, right? Where would you prefer to be? Yes, we're trying to mitigate risk when we step in and we equalize position sizing, that kind of thing. But there is such a thing as a value trap too, right? There are stocks that are undervalued for a reason. There are stocks whose price is flat, down, or slow for a reason, right? So if it's about returning on your investment, you got to find something that's returning, right? So yes, I want to approach it smartly and mitigate that risk as best I can, but I got to take some risk if I'm going to make any money, right? The balance point is where you are temperamentally, and what your objectives are, as Steve was saying.
Yeah, I think maybe the battle aspect of that just comes from how animated I can be at times about things and focusing on one side of the equation and not both. So anyway, that's my best guess.
Well, so much for a battle royale, folks. The next segment is Foxy Boxing. Mud wrestling? No? All right. I can't get them to fight. I did have one other question. Jerry, how about this one? The last question on the AI space. One of you mentioned, I think you mentioned, being in the space since May. And let me back up a couple months before that. We saw a lot of these AI stocks in just a couple months go up some 200%. in a very short amount of time. And it seemed like every news article, going back to our theme here of news, it seemed like every news article was hyping AI stocks. So you got these stocks going up 100, 200%, going up. People are hearing their neighbor making a lot of money. Creates, Jerry, would you say FOMO,
Sure does.
little fear of missing out. Is that a danger for people? What happens to people when this occurs, and how can they prevent? Like, what are the bad things that happen when they overreact and they succumb to FOMO, and how can they prevent that?
Particularly with those stocks, if you look at some of those charts during the beginning of this year, they're just screaming up the page, right? Like you said, going up 100, 200%. FOMO kicks in and stocks are really on the move, and investors and traders kind of jump on board, not understanding that they're likely buying at least a short-term high, for us. So what we look at, we like trending stocks. We like stocks that are rising in price, doing so consistently. But parabolic moves, I think, are one thing that we shy away from, because we've just seen so many times in the past that you chase these stocks that are on a tremendous run, and you're only going to see yourself, see a pretty big loss here right away. Steve and I, particularly in the swing trading group, we'll look at moving averages, and again, we like trending stocks, but we want to see some normality and price normality, and pullbacks to these moving averages on some of these high-flying stocks are what we do, and we've had success doing that, in the long term. So, again, we like trending stocks. If they're moving up the page quickly, great. I think there's better opportunities to buy them than just the feeling of missing out and, buying them a little too late in the run.
Can I get a clarification on something? Would you mention buying on a pullback?
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of a series or a couple of videos we had put out recently. The difference between a pullback and, like, how do you know when to get in?
Yeah.
Because a pullback could keep going, can it? Like,
Sure.
So when would you get in?
Sure.
Do you buy when it's still falling?
No, we don't buy when it's falling. If we're seeing a stock, for example, recently hit a new 52-week high, and then start to pull back a little bit. It's not necessarily a mass exodus, but just some natural consolidation. What we look for in that time period is lower volume, so we don't want to see heavy volume as price sells off, but a nice pullback to, let's say, the 20-day moving average. And if price settles in at that 20-day moving average and doesn't break below it, then we'll want to see a nice retracement off of it. And I think that dip is a good opportunity to buy in the middle of a really strong uptrend that has recently softened in the short term, as opposed to maybe, let's just say, for example, a stock that is well below its 50-day moving average and is rallying for 3 or 4 days. That dip is not necessarily the situation we want to get ourselves into, because that's more likely a shorter term move in the confines of a stronger underlying trend, as opposed to, again, a price hitting a new 52-week high, just pulling back to the 20. Maybe it's pulled back to the 24 or 5 times in the last 6 months. So that kind of dip buying opportunity is what Steve and I do, more so than anything else.
Awesome.